get this into your brain. And it is tricky to remember. So eventually it will just stick in there and it'll be just like everything else. But for now, we have to do a lot of repetition with it. And I want you to do it until you're like, oh my gosh, Anne, I already know this. Okay. So when you're doing... let's do 15. Something that looks like this. This would be an addition or a subtraction, right? So in this case, we do number 1, biggest integer wins the sign. So what is the biggest integer here? 15 or 5?
15.
So then the answer is going to be negative. We're only looking at the number. We're not looking at what comes before it for the first step. Then the second step is, if what comes before it is the same, we add the integers together. So this is a negative and this is a negative. We do 15 plus 5. And then if the biggest integer wins the sign, we know that the answer is negative. And then we add 15 plus 5, so it's negative 20.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can use a number line. I think it's a lot of work. But if that helps you and you really can't get the system down, then use a number line. So a number line would be, say this was 0, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So say this was negative 15 right here. To go negative 5 more is to go 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And then you're at negative 20. You can do it either way. This, if you can get it down, is the easiest way to do it. So let's try another one. Biggest integer wins the sign. So my answer is going to be negative. And then I have a negative and a positive, so I subtract the two integers. 15 minus 5 is 10. When we're multiplying and dividing, then we use, if a positive and a positive person is having a conversation, it's a positive experience. If a negative and a negative person is having a conversation, the experience is positive for them. If a negative and a positive person or a positive and a negative person are having a conversation, the conversation is negative for both of them. So if you had negative 5 times negative 5, it would be positive 25. So do you see how that's different? Totally 100% different. And then if we had 25 divided by 5 and they were both negative, it would be two negatives make a positive, so it'd be positive 5. Okay, I'm just going to make a video for the homework. I haven't looked at it yet, though, so let me check it out. Okay, so two-step equations. Do you have this sheet as well?
Yes.
All right. So the first thing we're always going to do is we're always going to try to get rid of this little piece right here. The plus 4 minus 2, if it's there. So that's going to be step 1. R over 10 plus 4 equals 5. So we're going to do minus 4 on both sides. Anything I do to one side, I do to the other. 5 minus 4 is 1. What's left on this side is R over 10. They're dividing, so I multiply. Anything I do to one side, I do to the other. This cancels each other out. What's left on this side is R. And then 10 times 1 is 10. So you do know how to do this. We've done this. But I think you just get confused. So I would like you to do this sheet and mute me, and I'm going to do all of the answers, but I just do your own thing. And then I will have all of the answers you could check back. I'm not going to do all of them. I'll do one of each type. Okay, 3p minus 2 equals negative 29. The first thing we take care of is this part right here. They're subtracting 2, so I add 2, and anything I do to one side, I do to the other. This is an addition subtraction problem, so I'm going to do biggest integer wins the sign. My biggest integer is 29. I have a negative and a positive, so I'm going to subtract. Biggest integer wins the sign. My answer is negative. 29 minus 2 is 27. What's left on this side is 3p. They're multiplying, so I divide. I'm going to divide this side by 3. Anything I do to one side, I do to the other. P equals negative 9. The reason why it's negative 9 is because we're now dividing, and I have a positive integer and a negative integer. So that's how we take care of that one. Okay, for number 5, it's k minus 10 divided by 2 equals negative 7. They're dividing, so we multiply. Anything we do to one side, we do to the other. This cancels each other out. K minus 10 is left. And we have a negative and a positive, and we're multiplying. So it's a positive and a negative person having a conversation. They feel negative about it. 7 times 2 is 14. Now we have minus 10. I'm going to add 10. Anything I do to one side, I do to the other. What's left on this side is k. What's left on this side is I have biggest integer wins the sign. My biggest integer is negative, so my answer is going to be negative. And I have a positive and a negative, so I'm going to subtract. 14 minus 10 is negative 4. Okay, so I'm just making sure I have all of the types of problems. Okay, negative 1/3 y minus 6 equals negative 11. They're subtracting 6, I add 6. Anything I do to one side, I do to the other. This cancels each other out. Negative 1/3 y equals negative 5. The reason why it's negative 5, biggest integer wins the sign. My biggest integer is a negative. I have a negative and a positive, so my answer is negative, and I subtract. 11 minus 6 is 5. With a fraction, you take whatever the fraction is and you flip it, including putting the negative sign there. So it's not just 3 over 1, it's negative 3 over 1, and that goes through the whole thing. Negative 3 over 1. And now we do negative 5 times negative 3 over 1 over 1. We have 2 people having a negative conversation. That's a positive experience for them. 5 times 3 is 15 over 1, or just plain old 15. Negative 2y equals negative 3. They're multiplying, so we divide. Anything we do to one side, we do to the other. We have a negative and a negative person, and we're dividing. So the answer is positive 3/2. And then I have to change it into a mixed number. 2 goes into 3 one time with a remainder of 1. So my answer is 1 1/2. Next one is 4 minus x over 3 equals negative 7. They're dividing by 3, so I multiply by 3. Anything I do to one side, I do to the other. What's left on this side is 4 minus x equals negative 21. There's nothing here, so that means they're adding. It's like a positive number. They're adding 4, so you subtract 4. Anything you do to one side, you do to the other. This cancels each other out. And then you're left with the negative x on this side. And then this one you have biggest integer wins the sign. My biggest integer is negative. And I have a negative and a negative, so I add these together. 21 plus 4 is negative 25. Now, when I have a negative x, I cannot have that, so I have to transfer my my negative over here. Basically, what you're doing is you're multiplying by a negative. 2 negatives make a positive, so it's positive 25. Okay, this one is 15 equals negative 3y minus 2, or w minus 2. So when you have a number that's touching parentheses like this, that means you have to distribute it out. So this is negative 3w plus 6 equals 15. And the reason why it's plus 6 is that we have a negative here and we have a negative here and we're multiplying. So it becomes negative 3w, and then it becomes negative 3 times negative 2, which is positive 6. Does that make sense to you, honey? I think you have me on mute. Okay. I'm assuming that that makes sense to you. They're adding 6, so we subtract 6. Anything we do to one side, we do to the other. 15 minus 6 is 9 equals negative 3w. Then they're multiplying, so we divide by negative 3. Anything we do to one side, we do to the other. What's left on this side is w. What's left is 9 divided by negative 3 is negative 3. Next type of problem is, let's see, negative 4, we already have done examples of those. Okay, negative 5 plus n over 3 equals 0. So we're going to take care of this first. They're subtracting 5, so we add 5. Anything we do to one side, we do to the other. This cancels each other out. 0 plus 5 is 5. And then on this side, we're left with n over 3. They're dividing, so we multiply. Anything we do to one side, we do to the other. This cancels each other out. We're left with n equals 15.